Imagine a silent valley. Two armies standing face to face. Thousands of armed soldiers frozen by fear. Every morning, for 40 days, one man breaks the silence. A giant. His name is Goliath. His presence alone is enough to shake an entire army. His armor shines under the sun. His voice echoes like thunder. And his words are not just a military challenge, they are a public humiliation. Why do you come out to line up for battle? Choose a man and have him come down to fight me. If he defeats me, we will be your servants. But if I defeat him, you will serve us. And no one answers. Not the strongest soldiers, not the most experienced warriors, not even the king. Now stop for a moment and think about this. How can an entire army be terrified of a single man? What kind of power does someone need to paralyze thousands? But this story is not really about Goliath. It's about someone who is not even on the battlefield yet. Someone without armor. Someone who is not a soldier. Someone most people would overlook. Just a shepherd, a young man named David. While warriors hide, he watches sheep. While leaders hesitate, he trusts. While everyone sees an unbeatable giant, David sees something different. And this raises a question that has echoed through history. What did David have that the others did not? Why could someone so small do what no one else dared to attempt? Because this is not just an ancient story. It is a story about fear, faith, and the giants we face today. We all have a Goliath, a problem, a fear, a challenge that feels impossible to overcome. And maybe, just maybe, the way to defeat it is not with greater strength, but with a different kind of faith. Today, I'm going to tell you the full story of David and Goliath, not as a simple Bible tale, but as a human story, deep, powerful, and surprisingly relevant. And it all begins in a valley called
To truly
Elah.
understand the story of David and Goliath, we must first understand the world they lived in. This was not a modern battlefield. There were no advanced weapons, no instant communication, no safe distance from war. In the ancient world, war was personal. Armies fought face to face. Victory was not just about land, it was about honor, survival, and identity. At this time, the people of Israel were still a young nation. They had a king, Saul, but they were far from being a powerful empire. Many tribes were still learning how to unite, how to trust leadership, and how to defend themselves. Across from them stood one of their greatest enemies, the Philistines. The Philistines were not nomads or simple raiders. They were technologically advanced. They controlled key cities, and most importantly, they had superior weapons, especially iron. In a world where bronze swords were common, iron weapons gave the Philistines a terrifying advantage. But their greatest weapon was not metal. It was fear. The Philistines understood something crucial about ancient warfare. If you could break your enemy's spirit, the battle was already won. This is where Goliath comes in. Instead of launching a full attack, the Philistines chose a psychological strategy. They sent out their champion, a giant warrior, to challenge Israel publicly. In ancient cultures, these single combat challenges were not unusual. They were a way to decide battles without massive bloodshed. But they were also a display of dominance. The message was clear. If your strongest man cannot defeat ours, then your entire nation is weak. And for Israel, this challenge struck at their deepest fears. Because in their culture, honor mattered more than life itself. To refuse a challenge was shameful, to hide was humiliating, and yet
that is exactly what they did. Every day Goliath stepped forward. Every day he mocked them. Every day he reminded them of their weakness. And Israel did nothing. Why? Because fear spreads quickly. When soldiers see their leaders afraid, fear multiplies. When no one steps forward, doubt becomes contagious. Even King Saul, chosen for his height and strength, remained silent. This was more than a military standoff. It was a crisis of faith. Israel did not just fear Goliath. They feared defeat. They feared disgrace. They feared the possibility that their God had abandoned them, and that fear paralyzed them. This is the world David is about to walk into. Not a heroic scene filled with courage, but a battlefield filled with hesitation, shame, and silence. A place where strength appears to rule, where fear speaks louder than faith, and where everyone believes the outcome is already decided. Everyone, except a shepherd who has not yet arrived.
Now, let's look closely at the man who brought an entire army to a standstill. Goliath. He was not just tall, he was massive. The Bible tells us he stood over 9 feet tall, a figure almost unimaginable in the ancient world. To the average soldier, Goliath would have looked less like a man and more like a living fortress. Every step he took shook the ground beneath him. But his size was only the beginning. Goliath was covered head to toe in armor. A bronze helmet protected his head. A coat of scale armor covered his chest, so heavy it weighed more than many men carried in total. Bronze guards protected his legs. A javelin was slung across his back, and in his hand he carried a spear with a shaft like a weaver's beam, thick, heavy, and terrifying, tipped with iron. This was not decorative armor. This was professional military equipment. Goliath was a career warrior. He had trained for combat since his youth. He knew how to fight, how to kill, and how to intimidate. Standing across from him, the soldiers of Israel didn't just see an enemy, they saw certain death. But Goliath's greatest weapon was not his spear, it was his presence. Every morning he stepped forward alone, not surrounded by soldiers, not hiding behind shields, alone. That alone sent a message, I do not fear you. Then came his voice, loud, confident, mocking. He didn't rush the battlefield. He didn't attack. He waited. And waiting was part of the strategy. Day after day, he repeated the same challenge. Day after day, nothing changed. This was psychological warfare at its finest. Goliath understood something deeply human. Fear grows when time passes without action. Each unanswered challenge made Israel feel smaller. Each day of silence made Goliath feel larger. The soldiers began to imagine the fight before it ever happened. They imagined his strength, his reach, the weight of his blows, and in their minds, they lost the battle long before it began. This is how fear works. It doesn't need to attack. It only needs to stand there, unmoving, unchallenged, until it convinces you that resistance is pointless. Even the strongest armies can be defeated this way, because fear does not measure reality. Fear exaggerates it. Goliath became more than a man. He became a symbol of impossibility, a symbol of humiliation, a symbol of everything Israel believed they could not overcome. And as long as Goliath stood unchallenged, he had already won. Or so it seemed. But what Goliath did not realize, what no one on that battlefield realized yet, was that fear loses its power the moment someone steps forward. And somewhere beyond the valley, a shepherd was on his way.
Before David ever faced a giant, he lived a life no one considered important. While armies trained for war, David walked the hills of Bethlehem, watching over sheep. He was the youngest son, not a soldier, not a leader, not even invited when Samuel came to anoint a future king. David's world was quiet. Long days, long nights, open fields, endless silence. And yet, it was in this silence that David was being shaped. As a shepherd, David learned responsibility early. If a sheep was lost, it was his fault. If a predator attacked, he couldn't run away. There was no one else to fight for him. And sometimes danger came. The Bible tells us that when a lion or a bear attacked the flock, David did not flee. He ran toward the danger. With nothing but his hands, his staff, and his trust in God, he fought back. He grabbed the predator, he struck it, and he rescued the sheep. These were not heroic stories told to impress others. No one was watching, no applause followed, but each victory did something inside David. It taught him that strength does not come from size, that courage is built in private moments, and that God could be trusted, even in life-or-death situations. While soldiers trusted armor and numbers, David trusted something deeper. He trusted God's presence. David spent countless hours alone, praying, singing, reflecting. The Psalms would later reveal a heart deeply connected to God. God was not an idea to David. God was personal, a protector, a guide, a source of confidence. This is why David's mindset was completely different from everyone else's on the battlefield. When soldiers looked at Goliath, they asked, "How can we defeat him?" When David heard about Goliath, he asked, "Why is no one defending the honor of God?" To David, the problem was not Goliath's size. The problem was Israel's fear. When David arrived at the camp to deliver food to his brothers, he heard the giant's challenge for the first time, and he was shocked, not by Goliath, but by the silence. He asked questions. Who is this Philistine? Why has no one answered him? His older brother, Eliab, became angry. Why are you even here? Who did you leave those sheep with? You're just curious. You don't belong. David was dismissed, belittled, misunderstood. But David didn't argue. He didn't defend himself. He simply kept asking questions. Eventually, word reached King Saul. David was brought before the king, a boy standing in front of a desperate ruler. Saul looked at him and saw the obvious problem. "You are not able to go against this Philistine," he said. "You are only a youth, and he has been a warrior from his youth." But David responded differently. He didn't boast. He didn't exaggerate. He told the truth. "I was a shepherd. When a lion or a bear came, I killed it. The same God who delivered me then will deliver me now." David wasn't confident in himself. He was confident in who God had already proven himself to be. This moment reveals something critical. David did not suddenly find faith on the battlefield. He brought faith with him. Faith built in isolation. Faith tested in obscurity. Faith strengthened long before anyone was watching. And that faith was about to step into the valley.
The valley is silent. Two armies stand on opposite hills, watching. And now, someone steps forward. It's David. No armor clanking, no shield raised, no sword at his side. Just a shepherd walking into the open. From a distance, he looks impossibly small. The soldiers of Israel hold their breath. Some turn away, some close their eyes. This is what defeat looks like, they think. Across the valley, Goliath notices movement. He squints, then he laughs, a deep, mocking laugh that echoes between the hills. "Am I a dog," Goliath roars, "that you come at me with sticks?" He sees David's staff, his sling, his youth, and he is insulted. Goliath begins to curse David by his gods. He threatens him. "Come here," he says, "and I will give your flesh to the birds of the air and the beasts of the field." This is not just trash talk. This is intimidation meant to crush a man's spirit,
before the fight even begins. But David does not stop walking. He does not look down. He answers, and his voice, though young, is steady. "You come against me with sword and spear and javelin," David says, "but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied." The valley listens. David continues, "This day the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel." This is the turning point, because for the first time in 40 days, someone is not afraid. Goliath moves forward. The ground trembles with each step. He raises his shield. He prepares to strike. This is the moment everyone feared. And David does something unexpected. He runs, not away, toward the giant. As he runs, his hand reaches into his shepherd's bag. He pulls out a stone, smooth, ordinary, unimpressive. He places it into his sling. Time seems to slow. The armies disappear from the story. The valley fades away. There is only David, only Goliath, only this moment. David begins to swing the sling. Once, twice. The cord cuts through the air. His training takes over. Years of protecting sheep, years of practice, years of preparation no one saw. Then, release. The stone flies, not wildly, not randomly. It strikes Goliath in the forehead, the only exposed part of his body. There is a pause, a breath, and then the impossible happens. The giant staggers, his knees buckle, and Goliath, the terror of Israel, the symbol of fear, the undefeated champion, falls face down into the dust. Silence. No cheers, no shouts, just shock. David stands still for a moment, as if even he is surprised by how quickly it ended. Then he runs forward. He stands over the fallen giant, takes Goliath's own sword, and ends the battle. The moment fear ruled is over. The spell is broken. Suddenly, the Israelite army erupts, shouts of victory, cries of courage, movement everywhere. The Philistines turn and flee. What one shepherd dared to do, an entire army now believes is possible. And the valley that once echoed with fear now echoes with triumph.
For a brief moment after Goliath falls, the battlefield is completely still. No one moves. No one speaks. The Philistines stare in disbelief. Their champion, the man they believed was unbeatable, lies motionless on the ground. And then reality sets in. The fear that once belonged to Israel now grips the Philistine army. Their strength was never in numbers alone. It was in the belief that Goliath could not be defeated. And that belief is gone. Suddenly, panic spreads. The Philistines turn and run. They flee the valley, abandoning their position, retreating toward their cities. This is the moment Israel has been waiting for. As fear breaks, courage surges. The Israelite soldiers erupt in shouts, not of terror, but of victory. They surge forward, pursuing the Philistines, driving them back, reclaiming ground they were prepared to lose. What one young shepherd did in a single moment changes the course of an entire battle. But the victory is more than military. Something deeper has shifted. For 40 days, Israel believed they were weak. For 40 days, they believed defeat was inevitable. Now they remember who they are, a people not defined by size or strength, but by faith. And at the center of it all stands David. Moments ago, he was unknown, a delivery boy, a shepherd. Now his name spreads quickly through the camp. Soldiers whisper it, leaders repeat it, eyes follow him as he walks. David doesn't celebrate, he doesn't boast.
He simply stands there, holding the sword of the fallen giant, aware that his life has just changed forever. King Saul watches closely. He sees something he cannot ignore. This is not just bravery. This is not luck. This is destiny unfolding. From this day forward, David will never return to a quiet life. The fields of Bethlehem are behind him. Songs will be written about him. Victories will follow him. Jealousy will rise against him. This single act of faith has set him on a path that will lead to the throne, but also through danger, betrayal, and suffering. David defeated a giant in the valley, but his greatest battles are still ahead. And yet, this moment will always stand as proof that fear can be broken, that faith can change history, and that one step of courage can alter the course of a life forever.
The story of David and Goliath does not end in the valley, because the valley still exists, just in different forms. This story has survived thousands of years, not because of a giant or a sling, but because it speaks directly to the human experience. At its core, this is a story about fear. Fear that stops us from moving forward. Fear that convinces us we are too small, too weak, too unqualified. Fear that grows louder the longer we remain silent. The army of Israel was not defeated by Goliath's strength. They were defeated by what they believed about him and about themselves. And then came David. David reminds us that courage does not begin when fear disappears. Courage begins in the presence of fear. David did not deny the danger. He did not pretend Goliath was small. He simply believed that the giant was not greater than God. That is the heart of this story. Faith is not pretending the problem isn't real. Faith is trusting that you are not facing it alone. And this is why the story still matters today, because every one of us faces giants, giants of fear, giants of failure, giants of doubt, rejection, anxiety, addiction, insecurity, problems that stand in front of us day after day, mocking us, telling us we will never overcome them. And like Goliath, these giants grow larger the longer we avoid them. But David teaches us something powerful. Your past preparation matters. The quiet battles you fight when no one is watching, the discipline, the faith, the character built in private, those moments shape who you become when the real test arrives. David did not win in the valley by accident. He was prepared in the fields. And maybe that's the reminder someone needs today, that your current season, the one that feels unnoticed, repetitive, insignificant, is not wasted. It may be preparing you for a moment you cannot yet see. David also shows us that you don't need the weapons everyone else uses. You don't need to be like anyone else. He rejected Saul's armor and chose what he knew. He stepped forward as himself, and that made all the difference. So the question this story leaves us with is simple, but deeply personal. What giant is standing in front of you right now? And what step of faith have you been avoiding? Because the giant does not fall until someone is willing to step into the valley. And sometimes, all it takes to change everything is one moment of courage, one decision to trust, one step forward. David's story reminds us, you may feel small, you may feel unprepared, you may feel outmatched, but faith has a way of turning ordinary people into history changers. And the same courage that stepped into the valley that day is still possible today. All it takes is the willingness to step forward.
Subscribe